Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? Welcome back to the middle of the order. And we are here with another DOP Division Outlook and Prediction. We are at the halfway point, this being the third of sixth. We've done the AL West and we've done the NL Central. So if you've missed either of those two and you want to take a look back, do me a favor. Go ahead and find those videos to take a look back and see what I think about those two divisions. Today's division is all about that mighty top half of the NL East, and then a couple of stragglers leaning in there at the bottom here. We're going to be talking about all of that and giving some takes for the 2025 season as we get closer and closer to the Tokyo series and opening day. That is always the most exciting part of any baseball season, is, well, the start of the season, to say the very least here. But with that all being said, let's get started here and talk about some of the teams, starting with your Philadelphia Phillies, who finished 95-67. They won the division last year. They were 8th in starter ERA, 14th in relief ERA. They finished 5th in runs in baseball. They finished as the 2 seed for the postseason, and they ended up getting a bye to the NLDS. Well, what do you know? The New York Mets, from this same division, they come into that seed and beat them 3-1 in this series. The Mets move on. The Phillies only can win one game in the postseason. Not an ideal year for them, but their team was great. They had a lot of momentum, and it just kind of ran dry towards the end here. But they're not losing too much, to say the least. They are losing Austin Hayes, Spencer Turnbull, Carlos Estevez, Jeff Hoffman, and Scott Kingery. So the bullpen taking a little bit of a hit, but they are adding pieces to help replace those. They bring in Jesus Luzardo from a trade with the Marlins. How about Jordan Romano from the Blue Jays? Max Kepler and Joe Ross are the 4 players joining the team here. So what's that rotation looking like, you might be asking? Well, Fangraphs has it as Zach Wheeler heading the charts there for the ace. Then Christopher Sanchez, Aaron Nola. I would swap those around, me personally. Ranger Suarez in the 4-hole. And then Jesus Luzardo, the recently acquired Marlins trade man, comes over. That's your 5 for the rotation. And that is a very strong rotation. Zach Wheeler, of course, a dominant pitcher and has been for the last couple of years. He leads that staff for sure. When you take a look at the lineup, there is no short of star power here. Trey Turner leading things off at shortstop, with Bryce Harper as the first baseman batting second. Alec Bohm bats third, plays third, and then you got Kyle Schwarber, the DH, batting fourth. I think they're trying to stray away from having him lead off and have Turner there and maybe move him to fourth. That's kind of what they've been talking about, and that's what Fangraphs has it at here as well. Nick Castellanos, the right fielder, he bats fifth. Then newly acquired Max Kepler in left field. JT Realmuto batting seventh behind the dish. Bryson Stott, second baseman, he bats eighth. And then Brandon Marsh rounds up the starting 9 out there in center field. The bench has Rafael Marchian, Edmundo Sosa, Buddy Kennedy, and Johan Rojas, according to Fangraphs. The bullpen, there's some names here to note. Jordan Romano now listed as the closer. No more Jeff Hoffman, no more Carlos Estevez. Funny enough, Jeff Hoffman actually ended up on the Blue Jays, so it's like the Phillies and Blue Jays made a 1-for-1 trade of their closers. So but alongside Romano, you got Matt Strahm, who's been very good for the Phillies the last couple of years. Orion Kerkering, the young kid who made people turn some heads for the bullpen last year. Jose Alvarado, Joe Ross, Tayon Walker looking to rebound. Starter moved to the bullpen, and he had a very tough 2024. There's no notable injuries, so the Phillies don't have to worry about that, unlike some of the other NL East teams. Their free agent class is, cause for a little bit of concern for next year. JT Realmuto heads to the free agency market, as well as Kyle Schwarber, Max Kepler, who's on a 1-year deal, Romano's on a 1-year deal, Joe Ross on a 1-year deal, and then Ranger Suarez. He's done arbitration. He will be heading to free agency as well. So 3 notable players and a couple of their 1-year deals that they made this year. They also have a couple of club options for Matt Strahm for $4.5 million and Jose Alvarado for $9 million. So depending on how those two pitch in the back end of that bullpen, we might see them pick them up. We might see them not pick them up. But that goes to show you this Phillies team looks good on paper, and I mean, we'll be talking about it more in detail coming up here, but let's continue on with the teams. Let's talk about the Atlanta Braves. What a season they had in the somewhat normally bad way, I would say, for Atlanta. They still finished 89-73. They were third in starter ERA, third in relief ERA, and 15th in runs. They were 6 games behind the Phillies for the division, but they did make the wild card as the 5 seed. They were tied with both the Mets and the Diamondbacks, but had the tiebreakers to get them the 5 seed there. They headed to the wild card series and faced the Padres, and they got swept 2-0 San Diego. Bit of a tough year for Atlanta on a whole level, really, but there was one key aspect that made 2024 very difficult, and that was the ability to stay healthy. Injuries plagued this team, but we got to talk about who are they going to lose from 2024 into 2025, because it's a long list of notable MLB players. So, Ramon Laureano, he's no longer with the team. Oscar Ynoa is gone. Jesse Chavez, Charlie Morton, Gio Urshela, Whit Merrifield, Adam Duvall, Max Fried is kind of the big one here. Kevin Biggio, AJ Minter, Travis d'Arnaud, Luke Jackson, and Jorge Soler all are sent packing and are no longer with the team. When it comes to the guys they get a trade with the A's for Nick Allen. They bring in Brian De La Cruz. They signed Jurickson Profar. That was kind of their big guy that they got this offseason. He's on the team now. And then a couple of non-roster invitee guys such as Buck Farmer and Hector Neris. They have plenty of notable non-roster invitee guys. So we'll see who ends up making the roster, because they're going to need some help, especially at the start of the season with their injuries still in effect here. When you take a look at the rotation, you've got Chris Sale, the Triple Crown Cy Young winner last year. Dominant season. What does he have left in the tank? Ronaldo Lopez listed as the 2. Then the young kid Spencer Schwellenbach is the 3rd guy right now. Grant Holmes, and then Ian Anderson. I remember there was a couple years ago I thought the Braves' top 3 rotation arms would be Mike Soroka, Ian Anderson, and Kyle Wright. And, injuries have affected all 3 of those guys. Hopefully Ian Anderson has a nice bounce back. When you take a look at the lineup, we got Jurickson Profar leading things off, playing left field. Austin Riley bats second, playing third base, of course. Matt Olson, the first baseman who plays every day, he bats third. Marcell Ozuna, the DH, bats fourth. Michael Harris, the second, out there in center, batting fifth. Ozzie Albies, second baseman, bats sixth. Then you have Drake Baldwin, who is the catcher, listed as a non-roster invitee. He bats seventh for the Braves. Orlando Arcia, the shortstop, he bats 8th, and then Jared Kelenic, right fielder. Can he figure out that top prospect potential a few years ago? He's the right fielder. He bats 9th for the Braves starting lineup there. When it comes to the bench, you got Chadwick Trump, Nick Allen, Luke Williams, and Brian De La Cruz, so some of the guys they added from free agency. When you take a look at the bullpen, they've still got some notable names here and some top guys: Rafael Iglesias, Aaron Bummer, Dylan Lee, Pierce Johnson, just name after name. And then, of course, right now listed on Fangraphs is those 2 non-roster invitee guys I mentioned, Hector Neris and Buck Farmer, currently listening into the bullpen. The IL, this is where things still hurt for the Braves. Ronald Acuna still suffering from his knee ACL. I don't believe he'll be ready for starting opening day. Spencer Strider's elbow, he is still out. Joe Jimenez in his knee, that keeps a key piece out of the bullpen out. And then Sean Murphy recently had a rib injury, I believe in spring training, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. He's expected to miss a lot of time, or at least, a good chunk of the beginning of the season. That's why they got Chadwick Trump and Drake Baldwin. So we'll have to see how that catcher situation goes. We'll have to see how this goes, because Acuna, Strider, and Murphy are 3 guys, specifically Acuna and Strider. Strider could easily compete for a Cy Young one day, and Acuna is an MVP caliber player, and he's got an MVP. So those are injuries that they need to keep an eye on for and see how they can manage that at the beginning of the season until those guys can get healthy. When you take a look at the 2026 free agents for the Braves, Marcell Ozuna listed and ready to go. Rafael Iglesias as well. And then they have some club options for sure. Chris Sale, an $18 million club option. If he has another Cy Young caliber season, I'd expect the Braves to take that option as well. Pierce Johnson, $7 million. Ozzie Albies, $7 million. And then Orlando Arcia, $2 million. So the Braves have some options there. So those four guys, if they want to, depending on how the season goes, they either get cut, maybe they stay. Ozzie Albies for $7 million, you're probably going to take that up. So we'll see. But the Braves at 89.73 last year. How will they come back? How can they compete with those injuries? We'll be talking about that. Let's continue on here and get talking about the New York Mets. Meet the Mets. What a season they had last year, and I mean this one in a good way. They finished the same record as the Braves, 89.73. Who would have thought? They were 12th in starter ERA, 17th in relief ERA, 7th in runs overall. Like the Braves, they finished 6 games back of the division, and they made the wild card as well as the 6th seed. Remember that final day of the season where if the Braves won twice against the Mets, the Braves and Diamondbacks would get in. If the Mets won twice against the Braves, the Mets and Diamondbacks would get in, but they ended up splitting, which allowed the Braves and the Mets to get in and the Diamondbacks to get sent packing. The Braves, as the 6th seed, what could they do? Well, they beat the Brewers in the wild card series 2-1. That clutch Pete Alonso home run in Game 3. They headed to the NLDS, where, as we mentioned earlier, they beat the Phillies 3-1 in the NLDS. They came for the title. They were the champions of that series. They then head to the NLCS, 4 wins away from a trip to the World Series, their first time since, I believe, 2015. Against the Royals. Would that have been that year? I believe so. And they ran into kind of the team to beat, and that was the Dodgers. And unfortunately, they beat them, but only twice before getting the 4 losses handed to them. The Dodgers take that series 4-2. That's where the magic run ended for the Mets, but they had a lot of magic. And they're trying to repeat that in 2025, but it might be a little bit different with a very different looking team and a new guy at the helm in the star section. So who did they lose? Harrison Bader, Luis Severino, Jose Iglesias, Mr. Oh My God. He was part of that magic that they had, him and Grimace, of course. Brooks Raley, Adam Ottavino, Jose Quintana, JD Martinez, and Phil Merton are all heading away from New York there. Who did they add? Well, let's start with who they retained, because they brought back key free agents who were on the market. Pete Alonso is back with the Mets. Sean Manaea, Jesse Winker, Ryan Stanek, and Drew Smith all return to New York. They did all of that. They also brought in Joey Meneses from the Nationals on a non-roster invitee deal. They bring in Frankie Montes. They bring in Clay Holmes from the Yankees and plan to use him as a starter. Griffin Canning, AJ Minter from the Braves, Yenis Cabrera, Nick Madrigal, Jose Siri from a trade with the Rays, and of course, Juan Soto signs the biggest contract in, I think, sports history, realistically. He's here with the Mets this year, and they're hoping his stardom can help elevate this team. He's back in the NL East since leaving the Nationals. He went Nationals, Padres, Yankees, and now to the Mets. The rotation is as followed. Kodai Senga. He's going to be healthy this year. What does he have for his technical second year in the league? David Peterson listed as the 2. Clay Holmes, the transition from closer to relief to starter. Paul Blackburn as the 4, and then Griffin Canning right now is the 5. That's your rotation. The lineup, Francisco Lindor leading things off, the shortstop man himself. Juan Soto out there in right field batting second above Pete Alonso at first base. So what does that mean for Pete's value in the lineup? How much is he going to improve this year? Brandon Nimmo in left field batting fourth. Mark Vientos, the third baseman, bats fifth. Jesse Winker DHing sixth. Francisco Alvarez, the catcher, batting seventh. Jeff McNeil at second base bats eighth, and then Jose Siri out there in center will bat ninth in the Mets lineup. The bench has Luis Torrens, Luis Angel Acuna, Starling Marte, and Tyrone Taylor. That makes up that bench there. The bullpen, they have the very elite Edwin Diaz alongside Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, Taylor McGill, brothers of Trevor McGill, Oscar Brazoban, among other guys there as well. A couple guys on the IL to start the season. Nick Madrigal, AJ Minter from the bullpen, not great there. And then a couple of starters, Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas will not be ready for opening day. So, the Mets season could fall off the rails quickly, but how quickly can they get those guys back and helping from the rotation? When you take a look at the 2026 free agency class, they've got some names here. Mostly some guys that they had one-year deals to. Starling Marte, he's listed here. Jesse Winker, Ryan Stanek, Griffin Canning, Paul Blackburn. 4 of those guys there with one-year deals, so makes sense. I have a club option for Drew Smith for $2 million, so depending on how he plays out of the bullpen. And then they've got some player options, actually. So Alonso can choose to stay for $24 million. Frankie Montas can choose to stay for $17 million. And then AJ Minter can choose to stay for $11 million. So a bit of uncertainty from the Mets front head of the organization, but you've got an elite class team with an elite dominant hitter in Mr. Juan Soto. So some things to keep in mind here for the Nationals. From the Mets. Let's get on to the Nationals, is what we all meant to say there. Mets, world class. Nationals, we're moving on. They finished 71-91. The Washington Nationals did 23rd in starter ERA, 21st in relief ERA, and 25th in runs, so not great overall. They finished 24 games back of the division and 18 games back of the wild card. That's probably about over a month of work of games to get back on. They lose out on some guys here. Tanner Riney no longer with them. Joey Meneses gone. Joey Gallo not there. Then how about Patrick Corbin? 2019 hero alongside Strasburg and Soto and some of those other guys. I think Corbin might have been one of the last pieces from that 2019 Washington Nationals team. So a little bittersweet there for some Nats fans because, of course, recent years he hasn't been the best pitcher. They bring back Kyle Finnegan. They bring back Trevor Williams. They also add Nathaniel Lau from a trade with the Rangers. Lucas Sims, Paul DeYoung, Jorge Lopez, Ahmed Rosario, Josh Bell, Michael Soroka, and then, excuse me if I butcher this one, Shinozuki Ogasawara is how I'm going to be pronouncing that name. All guys coming over, most of them on one-year deals. So how does that rotation look entering the season? Mackenzie Gore, the ace of that staff, with Jake Irvin at the 2, Mitchell Parker for the 3, Trevor Williams the 4, and then Michael Soroka the 5. I love me Michael Soroka. Hopefully he has a amazing year. Can kind of find that 2019 Braves form that he had. The lineup, C.J. Abrams, Mr. Gambling Man himself. We love to see that. He's the shortstop. He leads off. Dylan Cruz in right field and James Wood in left field. I don't remember the last time I was this excited for two prospects on the same team. Probably Bo Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for the Blue Jays back in 2019. Dylan Cruz, I love. James Wood, I love even more. These guys bat second and third. Nathaniel Lau playing first base. He bats fourth. Josh Bell, the DH, bats fifth. He's back with the Nationals. Luis Garcia Jr., sixth. He plays second base. Keibert Ruiz bats seventh as the catcher. Paul DeYoung at third base. And then Jacob Young out there in center field. He bats ninth in the lineup. The bench has Riley Adams, Jose Tena, Ahmed Rosario, and Alex Call. He's on call for the bench. The bullpen's got some notable names, and of course some of those guys who were on the one-year deals. Kyle Finnegan, Jorge Lopez, Lucas Sims, Derek Law. Then you have Shinosuke Ogasawara. And then they have Colin Poche listed as a non-roster invitee. He was a fun guy back with the Rays a few years ago. The only notable name on the IL for them is Josiah Gray. That rotation, it's not an ace rotation by any means, but Josiah Gray definitely helps out, in that rotation. So helping him get back and healthy is a key going forward here. When you take a look at the free agents for 2026, it's pretty much everyone who they signed this year, they're all on one-year deals. So Soroka, Josh Bell, Kyle Finnegan, Jorge Lopez, Lucas Sims, Ahmad Rosario, Paul DeJong, and Derek Law. Pretty much, Derek Law, I think, is the only guy who was here last year already. But all of them free agents at the end of this year, all on one-year deals. So that's what the Nationals are looking like for 2025. And that brings us to the final team here to go over, the Miami Marlins. And oh boy, what a season they had. They were 62 and 100, one of 3 100-loss teams. They were 29th in starter ERA, 22nd in relief ERA, 27th in runs, and not great. They were 33 games back of the division and 27 games back of the wild card. Yikes. They lost a couple of guys, Vidal Brujan, Jesus Luzardo. They traded him to the Phillies. Jake Berger, they traded him to Texas. And Tim Anderson, of course, they lost a lot more during the season. They made a lot of trades at the deadline, sending away their team, really. Who are they bringing in? Well, they're bringing in Cal Quantrill, so that's a fun name there. But among that, they got Eric Wagaman and Albert Almora Jr. on a non-roster invitee, but really not much outside of that. The Nationals were a postseason team in 2023, and it takes 1 year for them to dismantle, well, everything they had, really. They have some players still, and of course, one guy who they have that's good to be back and excited to see back for a little bit. Sandy Alcantara, he leads that rotation now. He's going to be healthy. He's, of course, the ace of that staff. The question is, does he get traded this year or next year? So we'll have to see about that. It makes more sense this year. Ryan Weathers, Edward Cabrera, Max Mayer, and Cal Quantrill shows how the rest of that rotation shapes up. The lineup's got some notable guys. You know, they're starting to kind of build some young core around them. Xavier Edwards, the shortstop. Connor Norby at third base. And then Jesus Sanchez, the right fielder. He's got a lot of power. Jonah Brad, the DH. He bats fourth. Then you got Matt Mervis at first base. Otto Lopez had a kind of nice, second half of the season last year. Hopefully he can keep that going for the Marlins. He plays second base. Kyle Stowers in left field. He's the seventh man. Dane Myers in center field. He's the eighth. And then Nick Fortes, the catcher, bats ninth. The bench has Liam Hicks, who they picked up in the Rule 5 draft this year. Also has Javier Sanoja, Eric Wagaman, and Derek Hill. The bullpen. I was trying my best to find guys who they had for that bullpen. The only name I know is Anthony Bender. He's a nice guy. The closer right now is listed as Kevin Fosher. Never heard of him. Like kind of the rest of this bullpen, I'm excited to see some of them in games, and hopefully one or two of them can kind of make a step and take a leap and be better. The IL, Yuri Perez, the young starter, he's starting the year on the IL, as well as Braxton Garrett. So 2 guys for the rotation. That does not help them out in the slightest. And, the good news on all of this, I guess, is for this year, the only player they're ending up losing is Cal Quantrill, who's on that 1-year deal. That's the only free agent they have for 2026. So everyone here is essentially going to be back next year unless they get traded. So that's kind of, I guess, a nice little outlook, if you want to go off of that. Let's dive on in. Let's talk about the NL East. Let's talk about these teams here and talk about how this division is going to roll here. I want to talk about the Braves first. I want to start there because they are, on paper and in my mind, the best team and one of the best teams outside the Dodgers. They, top to bottom, fantastic. Rotation's amazing. Lineup's great. The problem is they've dealt with injuries. They keep dealing with injuries. If they can get Acuna back, and if they can get Strider back and Murphy eventually, and not lose anyone else on key players, that's where the Braves will be whoa, I can't even talk right now. Successful in. If you missed it, I mentioned the Braves A973 bad year, Mets A973 good year, and that's all off of expectations. But when you look at the Braves, statistics and the games played from last year, Matt Olson, he has not missed a game at first base since joining with the Braves. He's played 162 games last year and has for the last couple of years. That's a lock. Marcelo Zuna also joined him, played 162 games. He was a DH. He was able to stay healthy. You love to see that. And then you had Orlando Arcia, who had 157 games. He missed out on just 5. That was the only 3 that were consistently there, healthy, ready to play each and every single day. But when you start taking a look at everyone else, Travis d'Arnaud played 99 games. Ozzie Albies played 99 games. Austin Riley, 110. Michael Harris, 110. Ronald Acuna Jr., 49 games. Sean Murphy, 72. And then you kind of get into that bench area there. They had, it seemed like at one point, at least 2 or 3 of their key players out at any moment in the season. And that's hard to kind of build that culture and then build that core there, because obviously you never have the right team that you want to play with. The team that your GM builds and the team that you got, you can never properly get all 9 guys on the field working your hardest. So the fact that they still finished as a wild card team and they still finished 89 and 73 goes to show you how good this team still is, how good those players are, and how resilient some of these players are. But it does make me worried because, you know, it's not that they didn't get better, because they still have a fantastic team, but the Mets added Soto. You take a look at what the NL West did and some of those guys. So I think for me, the Braves, I mean, early season stuff is going to be the real telltale test. If they struggle, if they don't have Acuna and Strider, if they look tough out the gates, you know, depending on how the other teams look, it might be a hard comeback for them later in the season when they get these players. But if they can, you know, middle at 500 and be kind of there competing at the beginning of the season, which they still have all the talent to do that, don't get me wrong. When they get Acuna back, when they get Strider back, how good can this team go? That for me is the question, and that for me is what I think will happen. I think that the Braves have this incredible team. I think Ozuna is going to be a threat. I think Olsen probably had hit one of his worst seasons as a Brave last year, and he still hit, I think, over 30 home runs. He is still that guy. Remember, he broke the Braves franchise record for home runs, I think, either franchise overall or franchise at first base. He had 54 home runs in 2023. So unless he was able to repeat that, it was going to be a down year for him. I think Matt Olson's going to come out of the gate stringing strong. They bring in Jurickson Profar, who I think, you know, had a career year with San Diego. It earned him a nice deal here. I think he's going to, you know, come out swinging. So I think he's going to be a threat. And if he leads off, you know, how good can he be getting on base for those guys behind him? I like the lineup. Chris Sale, dominant. I don't know if he's going to be Cy Young dominant again this year, but I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table. He's always an exciting guy in the rotation there. The young kids, Spencer Schwellenbach, Grant Holmes. What do you have at Ian Anderson? I like this Braves team a lot. We'll go to the Phillies because that's kind of the guy in the team to beat here. You know, these teams have faced each other in the playoffs the last couple of years, and the Braves have always been the better division team, and then the Phillies come in the postseason and just beat them, you know, and that kind of happened last year with the Mets and the Phillies. You know, the Phillies were the better team in the division. The Mets come up, and they beat them, and now the Mets have Soto. And the Mets have Jose Siri, and they bring in Clay Holmes to the rotation, which for me, you know, if you've missed other episodes where I've been talking about this, it always worries me when a guy goes from reliever or closer to rotation. You know, it's a big change that if you can't comprehend the change and the abilities that come with it, it could be challenging. So, you know, they have the rotation pieces that if it doesn't work, they can put him back in the bullpen. And I think they would be better out for it. But if it does work, then all the power to them, and great for them. They're paying him like a starter. You wouldn't want to put him in the bullpen. But like I said, Kodai Senga, Peterson, Holmes, Blackburn, and Canning right now is the starting 5. If you bring in Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas into that, who are on the IL, if they were healthy, then you would go, Senga, Manaea, Montas, Peterson, Holmes, essentially. But if Blackburn is pitching well, if Canning is pitching well, and Holmes isn't, there's nothing wrong with that swap in my mind. Of course, the big news with the Mets is Juan Soto. You bring in a guy, he's going to hit, 40-plus home runs potentially. He's going to walk 100-plus times. He's going to be the difference maker in this NL East division. He's the reason why the Mets can compete for the division. The Mets last year were magical. They had Grimace, they had Oh My God, they had all of these different things. Each week they were bringing out some charm and some luck, and it worked. That win streak was a turning point. Like everything about this Mets season was unpredictable, and it was great for 2024. But now we're in 2025. That kind of stuff, like they don't have that Rays devil magic that every year they have this kind of luck. If anything, the Mets usually have the bad luck of baseball. So they got lucky last year in some aspects, but their team definitely played up to when it mattered. And now it's a new year. Now you bring in Soto. What can the Mets do? What can they offer? Is it going to be a division-chasing season for the Mets? Are they going to go for the top step? Obviously, that's the goal. But the Braves are great. The Phillies are great. So where do the Mets stack up in that is the question. Of course, we didn't really talk much about the Phillies. Didn't have to change too much with the team. They bring in Jesus Luzardo, who, for me was once an elite guy with the Athletics. I remember watching him in the 2019 wildcard game and got moved to the Marlins. Now he's a Philly. He's at the back end of that bullpen, so less of a workload for him, which could help him get some confidence back. He's been kind of struggling as of late, especially in spring training recently. They bring in Jordan Romano, who I think is an elite closer. I'm excited to see him pitch. Love me a Canadian. You bring in Max Kepler, so what can he do for you? And then, of course, you've got the talent. You've got Turner, you've got Harper, you've got Schwarber, Castellanos, just boom, 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 mashers at the top of that lineup there. They finally got a division. They've always been chasing the Braves the last couple of years, and they always came second, always had to beat them in the wild card. They finally get the division. At what cost? A NLDS exit to the Mets. We'll love to see it. I think what we'll end up seeing is the Mets win the division and the Braves will beat them in the wild card round or something, or I don't know. It's just, it's funny how this NL East works in this three-headed division, really. I'm excited to see them compete, and I think that, on paper, the Braves have the edge when their team is healthy. Of course, the Phillies have the advantage with not having any substantial injuries. The Mets, they have Sean Manaea, they have Frankie Montas and Madrigal. Braves, of course, we've mentioned Acuna, Strider, and Murphy. Phillies don't have any notable guys sitting out, so that's going to favor Philadelphia, especially at the start of the season. If they can get out and hot early on, they could be primed for another division win here. Of course, 6-game difference, but that was last year. What can happen this year? Of course, Mets with Soto. Let's move down in the divisions here. We'll skip on the Nationals for now. Let's talk about the Marlins. They were a playoff team in 2023. They lost the Phillies 2-0 in that series. And they traded away guys like Jazz Chisholm and Brian De La Cruz during the deadline. The season got awry for them super quickly early on. I think they had I forget what it was, but I think it had like a 13-game losing streak in the first 15 games of the season. They were bad early on. You saw it here, 29th in starter ERA is second worst, 27th in runs. They couldn't score runs. They couldn't pitch. They really couldn't do anything. It's a reason why they were one of the 3 100-loss teams. You lose Luzardo, you lose Jake Berger, who is pretty much all of your offense. Those 27th in runs, it would have been a lot lower had it not been for Berger. And, Vidal Brujan, who, a young kid, had his moments of wow, but also wasn't fully there yet. So, I like Vidal Brujan. They bring in Cal Quantrill for the rotation. Listen, they've got a bunch of young guys. Xavier Edwards, I got to watch him last year. He looked fun. I think he had 3 triples in the game I went to go to. Super excited about him. Jesus Sanchez, he's always somewhere in the records of longest home runs in a season. He's a powerful guy. Otto Lopez had a fantastic second half, as I mentioned. What can you get out of him? Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, some of those prospects that they got, I believe, from Baltimore, I think, for the Trevor Rogers trade. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but Connor Norby, he's a top prospect. He's be batting second, apparently. What do you have out of him? And for me, I guess the big question is Sandy Alcantara. There's a club option, I believe, for him this year. Club option next year. Which I think he would end up taking. So essentially you have 2 seasons of Sandy Alcantara, and if he comes out the gate and is dominant, kind of like he was when he won the Cy Young in 2023, then you have nothing to worry about, I guess, besides, who wants Sandy Alcantara. You're trading a sizably ace guy there at a kind of discount, I guess. Like, you don't really have that kind of oomph at the top of the lineup there, but we'll see. Sandy Alcantara, if he gets traded this year, if he gets traded next year, but he's definitely a guy who will be circling in trade rumors as the season goes underway, especially if he pitches very well. If he's the only bright spot in this Marlins team, then I think it's going to be, hey, where does he end up? Because he can't stay here. He's too good. And, so something to keep an eye out there for the Marlins here. We'll have to watch and see how their 2025 season kicks off and gets underway. But yeah, I mean, when I look at this team, the only players who I'm excited to really see and watch, Sandy Alcantara, Xavier Edwards, Connor Norby, Otto Lopez, Jesus Sanchez, Edward Cabrera could be fun. So really, it's going to be a tough year for the Marlins, I think. I think it's going to be a transitional period for them. They just got out of one, and they made the postseason in 2020 when they had the expanded playoffs, and then 2023. So, 2 playoff berths in 4 years, and now they're going back to this transition. So, it's tough if you're a Marlins fan. It's a nice ballpark, and it just doesn't get filled out. It doesn't get the talent that it deserves. Every offseason, I always see the, how good the Marlins could be, like rumor thing that circles out where they make a team based off all the players the Marlins have traded in the last, 5 years, 6 years, maybe even longer. But guys like Stanton and Yelich and Remuto and now Jesus Luzardo and Jake Berger, and it just, the Marlins could have such an amazing team, but they end up transitioning. So tough year again for the Marlins, I think. But on brighter spirits, the Nationals. They're a very likely candidate to finish 4th in the division. It's going to be very hard to be worse than the Marlins, and it's going to be very difficult to be as good as the 3 ahead of them. They've got a lot of young talent, and guys I'm excited about. Guys like Mitchell Parker, who made his debut last year, who, early in the season looked good, of course struggled afterwards, but, this is for him, for a young kid. Make the adjustments, come out of the year, and be a guy for the rotation there, be someone strong. Michael Soroka, loved him. He had a strong second half with the White Sox, and that's saying something because if you're on the White Sox and you're pitching well, there's no reason you can't go to the Nationals and pitch well. He's back in the NL East, and hopefully he becomes kind of the guy there because, like I said, I love Mike Soroka. I think he's such a great player. The most exciting part here for me is that 2 through 5, I think, of that lineup. Josh Bell, love him on his Pirates, loved him on the Padres. The Nationals, remember how good he was with the Nationals and then ended up trading him. They traded for Nathaniel Lau, so they're still already trying to make moves, which is great. It kind of asks the question of Texas of why would you trade him, but hey, this is a nice move for the Nationals. You bring him in. And then as I said, in the preview, Dylan Cruz and James Wood, 2 outfielders, the corner guys, who I am more than excited about. I think Dylan Cruz, he was a top, I think he was drafted 2nd after Paul Skeens last year or something. I forget which exact year it was and where it was exactly, but he was a top 3 pick. He's going to be a star, I think. And then James Wood has kind of been this guy here who's come up and he's played very well. He's a giant, man. He's huge. I'm very excited. James Wood, Dylan Cruz, I think those top 2 right there. CJ Abrams, it kind of begs the question of course, last year's issue towards the end of the season when he was at a casino until I think 6 a.m. When he had a morning game the next day. Obviously, the Nationals found out, sent him down to AAA for the rest of the season here. You start to look at this team. Okay, guys on 1-year deals. Soroka, Bell, Finnegan. We mentioned how many 1-year deals they had. So, still, worst case scenario for the Nationals, the team isn't great, but some of those 1-year guys are playing very well. You trade them at the deadline, and you bring in some prospects to help continue to grow this team. But when I look down this team in order here, I mean, it's guys who are on 1-year deals and veterans who've been in the league who, aren't great, but can still offer something to a team. And then the young talent that they've had here. So for me, CJ Abrams almost is the leader of this team now. Him and Mackenzie Gore. Those are the 2 guys they got from the Soto deal, I believe, from the Padres. And now it's like Luis Garcia Jr., young kid. Cruz and Words, young kids. Lau just got traded here. Bell, DeYoung, young, all kind of young or not young, all traded and on 1-year deals here. The rotation, no more Patrick Corbin, no guys there. So for me, C.J. Abrams and I guess Mackenzie Gore really, and I guess Keibert Ruiz, those three guys are kind of now the leaders of that clubhouse. A team needs a leader. A team needs a couple guys to stand strong and to help motivate this team as the season goes on. And if the Nationals have any chance at all for a wild card, potentially, and that's if everything is firing on all cylinders, if all these young kids come out the gates and become elite players, if the Nationals want any chance of that happening, they're going to need that leader. C.J. Abrams is essentially that leader, so can he, mature a little bit. I think that's kind of what you want to see out of Abrams, is take on a more mature role. Obviously still improving, himself. He's still a young kid to begin with, but, you want to start to see some of those leadership attributes, traits, or will it fall to a guy like Dylan Cruz or James Ward for next season? It's something that we'll have to watch. I'm excited about the Nationals, though. I haven't been excited about a Nationals team in a long, long time. With Cruz and Wood and Abrams and Soroka and Parker and some of those guys that I've mentioned, I'm excited to see what the Nationals can bring for 2024. Like I said, it's very likely they will finish fourth in the division, but anything can happen in baseball, so we'll have to wait and see. That's kind of the outlook that I have for the NL East here. So that brings us to the over and the unders, for 2025 here. Of course, we'll go to the top here. The Philadelphia Phillies have an over-under of 90.5. They're a good team. They're healthy. They're ready to go. They're primed. They want revenge for that NLDS exit last year. I think they're going to compete for the division. I will take the over at 90.5. The Braves, over and under 93.5. I love Atlanta. I think this is the best team. I think they're going to win the division. Acuna and Strider and those early injuries of the season do have me a little worried. But at 93.5, I will take the over on the Braves. I think it's going to be a two-way battle for the division between the Braves and Phillies, which brings me to the Mets, who are at 90.5. And that's a high number, and I think the Mets will still be good. I think they'll still compete for a wild card, but I think something will go wrong in terms of the Braves and Phillies. The Phillies and Braves, they'll have things go wrong, but they'll be able to bounce back. I think the Phillies are going to, or the Mets, are going to deal something. Maybe an injury, maybe just the Clay Holmes rotation thing just won't work out. With Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas not healthy, I think that pitching isn't going to be as good as we think it's going to be at the beginning of the season. I think they're going to struggle and then kind of have that mid-season turnaround point. They might finish with 88 wins. They're still competitive, but I'm going to take the under on the Mets. I think 90 is a high mark, and I think if one of these three teams is going to miss it, I'm going to say it's the Mets. But prove me wrong. I love me some orange and blue in the postseason, so we'll see how that goes. The Nationals sit at 70.5. Like I mentioned, I love the young talent. I'm excited for this Nationals team. I think they continue to improve, even if it is, if they finish 71-91, even if it's 72-90, even that one game difference better than last year, I think they're going to do it. So I'm going to take the over on the Nationals. I think they're going to be better, and I think those kids continue to step up and grow. And that brings us to the Marlins, who sit at 63.5. So essentially, will they finish one game better or the same or worse, or will they just be better? And for me, this team is not better than last year. Yeah, they're going to be trying out some of the young kids, and any prospect and any rookie can come up and kind of make a difference for a team here, even if it's 3 or 4 games extra. That can be a difference for the Marlins that we're not really seeing here. But on paper here, if Sandy Alcantara gets traded, which I believe will happen among anyone else, Jesus Sanchez could also get traded realistically. I think it's going to be a tough season, and I think it's going to be another 100-loss season for the Marlins. So for that reason, I will take the under on Miami. I think it's going to be a tough year. No offense to those fans. I like Miami a lot, but I'm just not seeing the talent. I'm not seeing, they're in a division where they'll be facing the Phillies, the Mets, and the Braves, and they might cause a problem for one of those teams, maybe the Mets, when it comes to the division race. But as a whole, they're in the NL, so when you think about the teams they face more often than not, that's the Dodgers, who will destroy them, and the Padres, and the Giants, and the Diamondbacks, and the Cubs, and the Brewers. And there's very little talent that they have over. But hey, those Marlins-Rockies series will be exciting watches, to say the least here. So yeah, that's the under there. And that's the NL East. We have done it here. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning on in for another DOP here. We're halfway through them. We've got one more. We got three more. We got one on Monday, one on Friday next week, and then one more on the Monday. That's the 17th, and that sets up the 18th and the 19th. That's the Tokyo series, and opening day would then be a week away. So very exciting stuff here. We are in March, and there's no better feeling than that. Baseball so close to coming back here. I appreciate you all. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening, and I will see you next time.